Hey YouTube, this is 13 Dragon Blade, aka Tachi13, doing a segment for Heretics this time. I'm going to be calling it Dragon Gods of the Sun. And basically, just another informative video to tell you how to use the deck, how to utilize its combos, and all the other stuff. Right here I have the three main combo pieces of the deck, because if you are running a Heretic deck, you're going to need all of these. Very importantly, this one, because it's a Cyber Dragon. So now, let's quickly go over each card, starting with this one. Heretic Dragon of Tefnuit. When you have no monsters and your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon it. Then once it's tributed, if I remember correctly, during the turn this card is special summoned, you cannot attack. So basically, you special it, then you tribute it immediately for Sue, and his effect will kick in, allowing you to get a normal monster, which I'll explain later. So, Sue's very good. He is the MST monster on legs. They also have one that is for monsters. I believe it's the opposite, which it's Heretic Dragon of Nenthet, but for right now we're going to focus on the three main ones. So Tefnuit is a Cyber Dragon. This just specials itself. The 22 beater. It blows up back row with MSCs, and of course when it's tributed you get a normal monster. So that's basically what it's there for. It's the one that starts off all your combos. And this of course is also a good one. You can normal summon it, you can tribute summon it. If you normal summon it, its attack becomes 1,000, and its effect is really good. Sorry for that glare. You target a normal monster on the field, and all face-up heretics have that monster's level. So you can make it equal and then just stack for Neo Galaxy Eyes if you get bored. And then of course, I'm not going to really touch him that much, but of course because it's Red Eyes, this deck can yank out Red Eyes from the deck using a Tums effect. That's all you need to know. And then of course, the normies that you gotta utilize. A lot of people like running 2 Wattails, but there's a chance that these can get Chain Disappearance. So it's always nice to have one or the other. And this gives you 2 different choices to have for level 6s. And then of course you do have to run Dragon Ball. I like to run it because I actually like making the rank 8 rather than just making a ton. I don't run Curse of Dragon, so I prefer just having these 3 normies. It's very basic, very simple. I'm going to just show you a basic play. Have this guy in your hand, have this guy in your hand, and have this guy in your hand. You're pretty much set for at least a turn or 2. So here's how it would work. Your opponent has a monster, you special this guy. Then you tribute it immediately, you bring out Sue. You special the Wattail in defense. And then of course you overlay into Heretic Dragon, King of Atum. And then once that happens, you detach the Sue, sending it to the graveyard. So now you have 2 dragons in grave, and you special Red Eyes from your deck. At this point, since you still have not normal summoned yet, you special the Sue back. Then you tribute the Sue, and you bring this one out. It's very basic and simple. Now, you have either 2 choices. If you have heretics in your hand, and if you want to do massive damage, then when Sue is tributed, you simply bring out the Dragon Ball, and let's say if you had, maybe another 2 heretics in your hand, just for examples. If you have 2 heretics in your hand, then you overlay these, and you make the very broken, I'm going to say his name, Heretic Sun Dragon Overlord of Sun Dragon Overlord of Heliopolis. So it's a 3k beater. You detach from it. You tribute any number of cards on the field or in your hand to pop that many cards. So here's what would happen. You detach the Dragon Ball, sending it to the graveyard. You tribute these 2, blow up 2 cards, and then their effects would kick in. So you'd instantly get 2 normies right back. Let's say if this was in the graveyard. Whatever the case may be. So now you've already started, and then you can overlay again, and then if you really wanted to be a douche, leave a Strike Bouncer on the field. This deck can make Strike Bouncer without even trying, so there you have it. this is their basic combo, just between these two dragons. Now, I'm also going to go into other choices that you can have in the deck, just for tech cards, really. You can have pretty much Monster Gate, anything that tributes, because it just says as long as it's tributed, so that means that you can get their effects off by cards that tribute, like Monster Gate and such. So, when you use Monster Gate, when you use Sue's effect, when you tribute summon the monster, all that good stuff will work to get off their effects. So, basically, as I said in my deck profile, if you want to run a stabilized deck, and they're actually quite easy to get their hands on, just run 3 Heretic Tefnuits, 3 Sues, and of course 3 S, and you've got a decent Heretic deck. That's all that you really need. And then after that, you just get a couple of level 6 normies, the Dragon Ball, which is very easy to pull, mind you. And you have the deck set up, and then all you have to do is really get the Exceeds, which are the ones that cost more. And, of course, Red Eyes that comes in the Structure deck for Chaos Dragons. Other tech cards that you would include in this deck is completely up to your discretion, but some of them that I would recommend. Obviously, you gotta have Honest, because this deck is very light heavy, and if your dragons, for some reason, get Veilered, or whatever the case may be, even Veiler doesn't really hurt this deck, because they tribute themselves, and they tribute once they leave the field, so it doesn't really matter. But Honest is just good, because sometimes they'll try to stop your play, and if they want to try to run over the dragon, you just drop the Honest. I'm not really going to explain this because a lot of people run Thunder King, but I'm just going to show it because, well, hey, it's Thunder King. And then finally, some of my tech choices. Grand Mole, the Gores, and the Tragodia, because I think hand traps are actually quite important in this deck. I would even go double Tragodia. And then, of course, the last tech card, the Doom Caliber Knight. Grand Mole is fun to use. I really like using Grand Mole in this deck, because I could be like, poke, poke, poke. Just get rid of all their big dudes and make them suffer. Gores is a great hand trap. He just, as long as he can stall you for a little bit. And Tragodia, you can take their level 6s and just exceed with it. Always, always nice. In regards to Doom Caliber Knight over here, I just like him. He's an okay card. He basically forces your opponent to do something they're going to have to waste. It makes them waste, and you have a 1900 beater poking at them if they don't want to waste it, because they know how his effect works. You just got to be not stupid enough to initiate his effect on your own. And then, of course, just quickly going over this is basically the Rhoda for Heretics. Gets a Heretic monster right from your deck to your hand, and that's all that it does. And then, of course, in regards to this deck needs draw power. Well, it may stop a little bit of the OTK push, but it also protects your dragons, protects you from taking damage, which is always good. Because in this deck, if you don't have that, you're gonna get screwed. And then lastly, another thing I like to tech is actually, because a lot of decks don't run it, 2 Mirror Force. Because you want to be able to protect your dragons as long as you can. And because, well, Torrential is a bitch, especially with this deck. If you Torrential at the right time, this deck will really cry. Now, I personally think a lot of people are not going to run this except for Dark Worlds, because Dark Worlds could be like, I'm overlaying my 2 Graphos. But anyway, these two are actually quite good to have in your deck, because they just give you a big beat stick. And it also gives you the ability to pop, which not a lot of your monsters do have. But he's there. He's there for you. He's basically your Blue Eyes. And you got to run at least 3 of this guy, 2 at most, because you can get away with it if you have Pot of Avarice in my case. 3 just makes it easier because you have it in your extra deck. I know this thing for sure is probably going to get hit on the ban list. It's so good. Just gives you a dragon. Yeah, it's a 0/0, but who cares? You just got Red Eyes from your deck. I need more Gaia Dragons, because this is what you do after your Tums are used. You just overlay it, and then you just poke your opponent for 26. And then, of course, we have the Strike Donzer tech, because Strike Donzer is pretty much in every deck that can make a rank 6. It's just that good. Exabeetle, because Exabeetle is really good. You can use it to take ace monsters. You can use it to send cards to the graveyard. And finally, last but not least, you can use rank 5 choices. And then the last tech that I like to run, I'll put them both out here, right here. Alright, Neo Galaxy Eyes. If you can see it, that's an ultimate rare. This is a Ghost Rare. Neo Galaxy Eyes can actually be made very easily with this deck. How, you ask? Well, remember the one that I mentioned at the beginning of the video? The one that can change the levels? Yeah, this guy. This guy takes the Dragon Ball and says, hey, look, brethren, let's make all our levels the same and rejoice. Stack on this guy. Detach all XYZ materials, if they're running an XYZ deck, of course, and he can attack that many times. So he's a 45k beater that guarantees your game. Not to mention he's a light target for Honest, so if you wanted to be a complete douche, you could be like, come at me, bro. As soon as they do that, drop them Honest. So anyway, that was part 1 of course, this Heretic deck. Heretic tips and tricks, and I hope to see you again on my next segment of Dragon Gods of the Sun. This is Itachi13, signing out.